All right, welcome to this explainer, where we're going to embark on a massive 2,500-year adventure through human thought. We're going to be tackling some of the most fundamental questions out there about reality, existence, and knowledge. And if you've ever found yourself staring up at the ceiling late at night wondering what is truly real, or how your mind actually connects to the universe, well, you're already engaging in the exact same tradition we're about to explore today. So let's just dive right into it. How do we know what we know? It sounds super simple, right? But this is actually the ultimate Socratic hook. It pulls you right into the mindset of a philosopher who's questioning reality itself. Are the things you see around you actually there, or is your brain just kind of constructing them? Is your knowledge based entirely on your physical senses, or does it come from some innate reasoning power built into your mind? Believe it or not, this single question has driven literally millennia of debate. So let's break down the word itself. Philosophy comes from the ancient Greek terms philein, meaning to love, and sophia, meaning wisdom. Put them together, and it is quite literally the love of wisdom. It's actually really fascinating to note that researchers point out that this Greek term was itself a translation of the ancient Egyptian concept murek, which meant the exact same thing. But the absolutely crucial shift that happened in ancient Greece, starting around the 6th century BC, was this massive move away from unargued mythological fables. Dogma finally gave way to reasoned theoretical discourse, and thinkers began to seek out natural, logical explanations for how the cosmos actually worked. Okay, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start by defining Western philosophy. Then we'll break down the core branches. After that, we'll take a quick journey through time, look at rationalism versus empiricism, explore the analytic versus continental split, and finally, give you some tools for starting your own journey. Section 1. Defining Western philosophy. Let's look at the shift from myth to reason. The really important takeaway here is that Western philosophy didn't start with dusty textbooks. It started with relentless curiosity. Sales of Miletus is often regarded as the very first philosopher, basically because he used observation and reason to try and identify a natural first principle of the universe, which, for the record, he believed was water. But it was Socrates who truly grounded the whole discipline in real human life. Socrates spent his days just questioning the people of Athens. The story goes that after the Oracle of Delphi famously proclaimed that no one was wiser than him, essentially because he was the only guy in town willing to admit he knew absolutely nothing, he developed the Socratic method. He went around critically examining people's everyday views on justice, beauty, and truth, just to see if their beliefs could actually hold up to basic logic. Moving on to Section 2, the core branches. Time for a systematic breakdown. To actually navigate all this human inquiry, philosophers break it down into specialized branches. If you're asking, what is the nature of reality? That's metaphysics. This is where you debate things like monism, which says reality is fundamentally one kind of thing, versus dualism, which says it's two. If you're asking, how do we know it? That's epistemology. Ethics tackles our moral values, organizing our thoughts on whether morality is absolute for everyone or relative to your specific culture. Social and political philosophy tackles the ideal society and government. Aesthetics examines the true nature of art and beauty. And underpinning the whole shebang is logic, which is the highly specialized study of valid versus invalid reasoning. So every late-night, deep thought debate you've ever had, it fits neatly right into one of these categories. Section 3. A journey through time. Let's look at the major eras of philosophy. Western philosophy is broadly categorized into these distinct eras. We kick things off in the ancient period in the 6th century BC with the Pre-Socratics, Socrates himself, Plato, and Aristotle. Then thought flows right into the medieval period, where philosophy becomes deeply intertwined with theology, featuring towering figures like Augustine and Thomas Aquinas. Fast forward to the 17th century, and that triggers the modern period, which was this massive secular rebellion against that older theology. Thinkers like Descartes and Locke were suddenly trying to define the absolute limits of human knowledge. And finally, the 20th century brings us into the contemporary period, which is marked by some really deep divisions in methodology and an intense focus on science. But despite this vast timeline covering thousands of years, it really is just one ongoing, unbroken conversation. I love this famous quote by Alfred North Whitehead. The safest general characterization of the European philosophical tradition is that it consists of a series of footnotes to Plato. Just think about that for a second. Every single debate in ethics, metaphysics, and logic that we have today is essentially just picking up where the arguments in Athens left off thousands of years ago. Section 4, Rationalism versus Empiricism. Get ready for the great debate. Let's look at rationalism first, championed by thinkers like René Descartes. They argue that true knowledge comes purely from reason. They lean heavily on deductive reasoning, starting from perfectly self-evident premises, kind of like the rules of geometry, to arrive at absolute truths. They actually believe the human mind comes preloaded with innate ideas. Now, contrast this totally with empiricism, championed by John Locke. He argued that the mind starts out as a completely blank slate, or tabula rasa. To an empiricist, every single idea we possess has to arrive through our sensory experience. They favor induction, which means drawing general conclusions from repeated, specific observations. And by the way, that is the very foundation of our modern scientific method. The empiricist David Hume took this sensory argument to its absolute mind-bending limit. He pointed out something wild. We never actually see causation. When fire causes heat, we just see one event repeatedly following another event. We don't visibly see the underlying necessary connection between the two. Because we can't experience causation directly through our raw senses, Hume argued that our whole belief in cause and effect is just a habit of the mind. I mean, that completely shakes the foundations of how we think the physical world works. That brings us to Section 5, Analytic versus Continental, the big 20th century split. Following the Second World War, philosophy sort of split in two. The English-speaking world largely adopted analytic philosophy. Driven by thinkers like Bertrand Russell, this school focused heavily on logical issues, language analysis, and scientific procedure, actively trying to avoid speculative metaphysics. Meanwhile, over on the European continent, thinkers moved toward continental philosophy. Deeply shaken by the totalitarianism of the 20th century, they grew extremely distrustful of totalizing systems. Instead, movements like Existentialism and postmodernism popped up, focusing heavily on history, human meaning, and political engagement. As philosopher C.G. Prato notes, the heart of this opposition really boils down to methodology. Analytic methods reduce complex philosophical problems down to their discrete parts. It treats philosophy almost like a rigorous science, tackling very specific, narrow issues in the philosophy of mind or epistemology. Continental methods, on the flip side, focus on synthesis. They look at how particular issues fit into larger unities of society, history, and existence as a whole. So, while an analytic philosopher might meticulously decode the exact logic of a single sentence, a continental philosopher might ask, what existence and history actually mean to a person's lived reality? Both offer incredibly valuable, yet entirely different, tools for understanding our world. Finally, Section 6, Starting Your Journey, a practical toolkit for you. If you want to jump right into this yourself, here are 3 awesome books that brilliantly capture the experience of philosophical inquiry. Bertrand Russell's The Problems of Philosophy is a crisp, 100-page tour of major epistemological questions, and it has been essential reading for a century. Robert Pirsig's Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance is just a fantastic narrative that shows you exactly what it looks like when a philosopher applies rigorous inquiry to something as incredibly practical as mechanics and daily life. And Jonathan Wolff's An Introduction to Political Philosophy is perfect for seeing how thinkers like Hobbes and Locke practically attack and develop each other's arguments about society. I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today. Reflect on how you came to know the things you feel absolutely certain about in your own life. Do you lean more toward the rationalist view, believing that you possess fundamental truths grasped by pure reason? Or are you a strict empiricist, convinced that every single thing you know was written onto your blank slate by your lived experience? Think about it. The unbroken conversation of Western philosophy is just waiting for your answer.